Apple just had its most successful quarter in history. We're going to discuss what contributed to it and where there's also some room to grow. Stick around. Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliette Beauchamp, and I am joined, as always, with Macworld senior writer Michael Simon, as well as Computer World executive editor Ken Mingus. So during the COVID pandemic, which has now been, really just reached its, we're right around its anniversary here in the United States, it has been a huge challenge for companies of all sizes, of all types, of all industries, but Apple notably may be the exception. Like we just mentioned, it had a record-breaking quarter, the first technical quarter of 2021, but that was from October to December of 2020. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but it had a revenue of $111.4 billion. A lot of this came from iPhones. So, Mike, would you mind starting us off? What sort of is the iPhone story here?
It's really the Apple story, but so the iPhone made 66 billion. Apple doesn't break out unit sales anymore, so we don't know what that translates into as far as like actual devices. My guess is that somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 million units, maybe something like that, based on the average selling price and other quarters and kind of extrapolating. It's bonkers, and so you talk about how companies are struggling during COVID, and a lot of it is that everything that's not a tech company is struggling, and the reason why is because tech companies were able to pivot so quickly to virtual, to online. Like obviously Amazon is a prime example, no pun intended, because they were set for this type of thing to happen. Now, I'm not saying that these companies plan for a stay-at-home order in states and quarantining and all that other stuff, but they were prepared for the inevitable shift to online first. And that's what we got. People couldn't go to stores. They didn't want to go to stores. They didn't want to go to movies. So they're streaming. They're buying more devices. They're working from home. They're schooling from home. All of these things that Apple is tailor-made to fill that need. So everything went up. iPhones, iPads, wearables, services, and Macs all saw double-digit growth. The Mac actually went down from last quarter. They sold 9 billion in Macs in their fourth quarter 2020, and only what's the number? Hold on, I think it's 8.4 billion in. No, that's iPad. 8.7 in 2021. So it actually went down a little bit. It contracted a bit, but these are blowaway numbers. Their year-over-year growth was 20%. Apple, a $2.5 trillion company, grew 20%. Is just bonkers.
It's interesting you talk about this because Apple really is hitting on a lot of cylinders here, and it's not just the hardware. I think there was like 15 plus billion in services.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the pandemic and the work from home, in a lot of ways that prompted companies to do upgrades because, a lot of companies on a 3-year replacement cycle, and they were sending people home with older computers that, suddenly were not working right or didn't have the needs that people, didn't have what people needed at home. And Apple's really well positioned with, the various the phones, of course, and the tablets and laptops and, well-equipped iMacs to help people set up an office at home. And in terms of IT support, once you've got somebody set up on a Mac, you don't usually get as much return traffic from people saying this isn't working, this broke, this crashed. I think even IBM has said that it has saved so much money by moving a lot of its employees to Macs and Apple hardware because they have fewer support calls and, they can have a smaller support desk. So I think it's a lot of things like that. And also some really compelling products. The iPhone 12 and 12 Pro are, this was, of course, the arrival of 5G, which may have prompted people who didn't necessarily have to get the latest phone, but maybe they are a year or two out. Okay, they're ready to upgrade. I think we looked earlier, Mike, you said that the number for iPhones was like 66 billion.
Yeah.
So that's well over half of the whole thing was just iPhones.
Yeah, it's been that way for some time. The iPhone is business, but it's not like the iPhone leads the way, but it's hardly their whole business. I mean, you can break out wearables. So 13 billion in wearables, which is Apple Watch, HomePod, AirPods. That is a Fortune 150 company by itself. So the question is, are people buying these things because they're the best? Are they buying these things because they have other products? Or are they buying these things because, Apple's pushing them? And it's like a perfect storm of all three things. Maybe another company, let's say a boutique company comes along and makes a really good smartwatch. That's as good as Apple Watch. Same price, same feature set and all that other stuff, and it does the things that it has the app support. And it's not going to happen. But let's in a fictional world, all of this comes through. It can play Spotify, all the things that you want it to do. It's not going to succeed like that because it doesn't have the Apple cachet. And it's crazy to think that a $2.5 billion company, you still feel like you're part of an exclusive club when you use it. But Apple has built this brand that it has a trust and it has a cachet and it still somehow has a cool factor despite being the richest company in the world and just making. I mean, $111 billion isn't just their best quarter. It's like the best quarter ever for an American company in the history of like earnings, other than like maybe like an oil company. I mean, it's just bonkers what they were able to do, and they're still able to do. I mean, there's still room, quite a bit of it, to grow around the world, both in the products that they have in market share, and they don't have AR, they don't have VR, they don't have
yet
any foot in the driving sphere. I mean, they don't make a touchscreen Mac. There's so many products that are on the horizon that they haven't even touched yet. So to say that Apple is somewhat nascent in this new technology world, I mean, they are. They're leading every conversation that they partake in. But there's a lot that they don't. And let's face it, they're not even charging for Apple TV Plus yet. That's not even included in this. It's free. Yes, maybe there's a couple people paying. It's technically $5 a month, but it comes free with any Apple product you buy anything. My guess is that 99.9% of Apple TV Plus watchers are getting it for free. And it's something of a punchline when you talk about Netflix and you talk about Disney Plus and the libraries and the shows that they have. But Apple TV Plus is really good. If I wasn't getting it for free, I'd absolutely pay for it for one or two or several of the shows I watch. Servant, Morning Show, Ted Lasso.
For All Mankind, baby. I got to put a plug in for All Mankind. I love that show.
There are really good shows. And I think that we're probably a couple of releases away for there being like a Stranger Things type show that is must-see TV. They're just killing it on all cylinders.
It's interesting too, and this sort of surprised me because Apple doesn't really address this much. But in the earnings call this week, Apple officials, Tim Cook, they talked about Apple in the enterprise, and of course Apple's, the black eye that's always been given to Apple is that, it's not an enterprise company. They don't play in the workplace. And Tim Cook acknowledged that they've been really making a serious push into the enterprise, making it easier for companies to roll out self-service hardware. So it arrives at the doorstep and it's already provisioned the way you need it. Johnny Evans, who writes about Apple for us at Computer World, had something earlier this week. I think it was based on some information from Jamf, which is all about, is involved in managing hardware. And I think their numbers showed that, and again, it's a subset of a subset, but their numbers showed that like 23% of computers in the companies they were dealing with were Apple computers, which is, everybody sort of assumes, it's like stuck at like 10%, 12%, something like that of the enterprise computing hardware that's rolled out. But it does seem like Apple's not making a big deal of it. But the tie-ups that it's done with different companies, and clearly now that we're in this new normal where even after the pandemic, I don't think we go back to the workplace as we knew it. Mm-mm. So people are going to have to be prepared to handle their own hardware and support. And I think Apple's really well positioned if it can put itself in front of some IT decision makers as a real player here. To, as you say, Mike, a lot of room to grow.
Yeah. And, the M1 obviously we just kind of scratched the surface there, but they're going to push those to all of their Macs this year and early 2022. That transition will be over. And it's still something of a misnomer that Apple is an out of reach luxury company, but it's really not. The 999 Air that is comparable to any any Windows machine you can get. I mean, and I think that we're maybe a year, maybe a little longer away from getting like a MacBook SE or something like that. That's like $700, and then say goodnight, because now we're talking about competing with all but the super cheap Windows PCs and Chromebooks. They've never really had a PC. You can say the Mac Mini, but that it's a tower and it's not what people necessarily are looking for, and is somewhat underpowered. All that stuff. If they can have an M1 or an M2, whatever's out at the next time laptop, like the iBook of old, that was $1,300. If they can make that $700, $699, oh my God, forget it. I mean, talk about room to grow. The Mac will double overnight, the market share.
I've got a question for you, Mike, in terms of software. And
for me,
again, for you, yes, a question for you. But I mean, I'm thinking about, again, the new work from home, normal, remote work from anywhere. The one piece of the puzzle that I still think Apple doesn't have, and I'm just asking you, do you think this is even an option for it? Is something around FaceTime and making it much more universally acceptable, across platform, a la Zoom. Do you think Apple would ever go in that direction, or is that? Go ahead.
They were supposed to. When Steve Jobs announced FaceTime, he said it was an open standard, and that they were bringing it to the industry as a whole, and we'd all be able to make FaceTime calls everywhere we were. And we don't know why that never happened. We don't know if it was a licensing thing, if it was a codec thing, or a standards thing. I don't know, because they never said it again, and we never heard about it again until someone brings it up on a show like this. Oh, by the way, 10 years ago we were supposed to get that. I don't know if they need to. I mean, they said that more FaceTime calls were made in this last quarter than ever before. So if everybody has an Apple product, we don't need them.
Then you
anymore.
don't have to. But everybody does that. I mean, I did see that.
I'm being glib.
That the numbers here did put Apple as like the number one, smartphone manufacturer, but everybody else is
the quarter. It's just
for the quarter, and everybody else is Androids. I mean, Android clearly dominates worldwide.
We're talking about even if it's 15%, 85% of the world is on Android devices.
So something like that. And I just wonder, again, a lot of it will depend on how the pandemic unfolds this year, hopefully winds down, where people wind up working. But I really sense, and this is going beyond Apple a little bit, but this cultural shift as to what work is, where it is, how you do it. And I think video is the thing that right now, as we've seen in the last year, ties everything and everyone together. So I just would love to see that go cross-platform. I guess that's what I'm saying. Give me some hope.
No, I do agree. And all right, here's the hope. In the last, say, 8 to 12 months, Apple has embraced the web more than it ever has. We have Apple Music on the web. We have Apple TV Plus on the web. So they are looking at these things, sign in with Apple, Apple Pay. These types of things that they're using to branch out the brand in various ways on other platforms. It was just rumored the other day that they're bringing sign in with Apple to Windows through the iCloud app or something. I forget the article that I read, but they're definitely they'd be crazy not to explore these things. If we look at the history of Apple, Windows is a very important part of it. The iPod didn't take off until it got Windows support. The Mac, you can argue that without Internet Explorer, we wouldn't be here today talking about Apple as a company like this. It saved Apple. So I think Apple is very in tuned to its place in the industry and how important Windows users are to it. I don't know, I'm not a development guy. The logistics of bringing FaceTime to the web like that, I have no idea. Obviously, it would have to be encrypted and private and easy to use and all that other stuff. But I will say this: I was using, I used yesterday Sign In with Apple for I think it was Etsy. It was one of those sites that I don't ever use. Sign Up at Apple is one of those things that you don't see very often, and when it does pop up, it's remarkable.
I love Sign In with Apple. For the record, love it.
How it's super private in the sense that there's a checkbox to say I don't want to share my email with anyone, and they don't even share it with the company you're buying from. They send a forwarding address. I mean, it's super easy to log in. Your information's there. Apple Pay, you use your fingerprint, send it through. So I think that the web is kind of that thing that Apple is still exploring, and if they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it in a way that is, for lack of a better word, iPhone-like, where it's super easy. It's not like Zoom where you have to go into your settings and get a share link, and like it'll be super easy, and still kind of baked into all of their products where needed. But we haven't heard a rumor about it, but I certainly wouldn't discount it.
Great. Okay, that's cause for hope, even if not in the next quarter, a current quarter, maybe by the time we get to WWDC this summer. I'm willing to wait. I just would like to see that. I just think there's a gap there for Apple. But what do I know?
I agree. I mean, Zoom is it's fine. I mean, I just think that I think FaceTime is better when I use it. Particularly like my son, for example, I got him an iPad for Christmas. I plug that like every show. but he
just
has
want us
an iPad
to
now.
think you're a really great dad, and we know you are.
But he uses FaceTime to call his friends and family all the time. Like boom, boom, done. And he loves it. And it's easy, it's quick, it's video. He like that's the way he calls. And there's a whole generation of him that's how they communicate. He doesn't know from Zoom. He wants FaceTime. So I think Apple at some point, unless they indoctrinate the entire younger generation to have everyone will have Macs. I think they do have to look at that and address that in some way. Also, I hate the way FaceTime does multi-window stuff with those bubbles that float around. They need to fix that too.
Yeah, not a big fan
agree.
of that. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good. I just wanted to check.
They can spend some of their $111 billion on it.
Well, that's exactly right. What let me ask you one more time. One last thing. Do we think the current quarter is going to be bigger or smaller than the previous quarter, the one that just passed?
Well, it's got to be smaller. It can't possibly be. You think you're going to make make more than $111 million? No way. It's impossible.
Okay,
so your answer is no.
That was Christmas and
Apple
the
did
iPhone.
say. Apple did say it expects
Macs,
it expects less.
Yeah, I mean it has to. It's gonna fall precipitously from that, but that's not what you measure, or that's not what investors or Wall Street or Apple measures it by. It's the prior year's quarter.
Right, year over year.
Now that one was.
But that's going to be tough to compare because that was in the midst of
Exactly.
I think those sort of annual comparisons for the next 6 months or maybe this whole year are going to be really tough because you're comparing where we are now, wherever that is, with the depths of the pandemic. So I'm not sure those are going to hold.
I mean, yet they grew 20%, and that quarter was China was in a pandemic then. Last year, the U.S. had just started to see cases in Seattle, and we were starting to kind of be attuned to that it was coming. We weren't ready for it in the sense that anyone really knew what the extent was, but it was all there. I mean, fair or not fair, that's the way they measure these things. And I don't think that their second quarter last year was particularly awful. Like, I think they navigated it as well as they could. Listen, it's always the first quarter, the second quarter for Apple is always a low, so to speak, quarter because, you have the holiday malaise and there's no new products generally. And people are, paying bills, not buying new stuff. But they'll still do, they can make zero next quarter and they're fine.
I think they'll make more than that.
Worry.
I predict they'll make more than that.
They announced Dan Riccio has a new project at Apple. Maybe his project is just to count the money that comes in.
I think that's the car, don't you? Don't you think it's the car?
We could talk about that at a different time.
Let's say
I don't think it's the car.
Okay,
we can talk about that. That's a whole other conversation.
All right, next conversation.
Yeah, I think that'll be a worthwhile conversation. And I think for Apple's Q2, I might be a part of it. I think it's going to be time for me to upgrade to the new iPhone. So, something to look forward to. For me personally, yeah. Well, thank you both so much for calling in and chatting. We'll have some links below to stories on Computer World and Macworld, just digesting and analyzing a bit more about what Apple's Q1 means and just a little bit more info. So those will be linked below. If you have any questions, comments about Apple's Q1 performance, let us know in the comments below. If you were one of the people who contributed to its record-breaking quarter, how are you liking your products? How are you liking your service? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks so much for watching. watching. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon in the corner so you're notified every single time we post a new video. And just a heads up, next week we will be going live for the first time. I'll be in a little bit of a new location, so that's exciting. That's something to look forward to. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.